It's Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank, and it's AM 1160 WCCS 101.1 FM. We get to catch up with our friends from the Indiana Regional Medical Center every once in a while. We're going to doing that here this morning with a couple of folks concentrating mainly on pediatrics and maybe a couple of topics that we don't get into very often. Pediatric occupational therapy. Whitney Joson is with us this morning. Did I do it? Did I get it right?
You did. Thank you.
Hey, how about that? And Jen Cunningham is back with us, too. Good morning. It's good to have you both with us here this morning. Whitney, you're new to IRMC's family, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So how long have you been here?
Just about a month.
Oh, yeah?
At this point. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Good. Let's pull that microphone a little bit closer to you. Or you can move forward, whatever you'd like to do. Pediatric occupational therapy. Let's talk about it. What is it? And how is it done?
Sure. So pediatric occupational therapy focuses on helping children develop the skills they need to grow and develop into functional and as independent adults as they can be. So we work with kids when they're young, when they're not reaching their developmental milestones or having just difficulties with any part of their lives, so that when they grow up, things will just become easier and more typical for them.
I know there's not a common way to approach it because every kid is different. But what are some of the types of things that we're talking about with a child whose development might be delayed a bit?
Yes, so specifically we work with kids on self-care skills, so if they're having trouble brushing their teeth and they need an adapted toothbrush, or fine motor skills, they're having trouble handwriting in school or taking notes from class. Some things as helping them learn appropriate responses when their sensory systems are a little bit not typical, and they're having trouble dealing with things in their normal lives. Mm-hmm. So all different things like that.
Yeah. So how does someone come to you for something like that? Are they referred by a physician? Do the families go right after you, or how does that happen?
So typically, yes, you would just need to talk to your pediatrician or family physician, and they can send in a referral, or sometimes they even call us and ask what they need to do, and we're happy to get them the steps they need to do.
Mm-hmm. And so I would assume then you meet with the child, see what's going on, have them do several tasks so you can get an idea of what it's all about, and then develop some sort of strategy to work with them?
Yes, that's pretty much exactly.
All right.
So we have different assessments that we use. Each assessment is, we pick one once we meet the child to see what is most appropriate for them, and then from there we see what we can do to help them.
Where do you work from, HMI?
Yes, we work at Indiana Total Therapy at the HMI building.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So folks want to know more about that. First stop is their pediatrician, yes?
Yes, pediatrician, family doctor, anything like that.
They can call us too, and we can help them.
Oh, yeah. You can sort of get them rolling through the program.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, Jen, I want to talk to you about speech therapy, and particularly pediatric speech therapy. You know, with the Teddy Bear Fund Drive, our concentration at that time of the year is always on pediatrics because of the pediatrics unit. But it extends to such a broad range of ways that children can be helped. And I know Teddy Bear Fund Drive has been able to do some things with your department.
Yes.
But let's talk about speech therapy for young children. What are we talking about there?
Typically people think of maybe how they articulate or even language development. A child can have language delays just as a natural process. They're delayed, or it can be something with autism. But something that's not typically well known is that we also do feeding. Children who are considered picky eaters. I think a lot of times so many people know people who are picky eaters, but that's really not how our bodies are meant to be. We are meant to have a great variety of food. There are a lot of reasons why they might be picky eaters, and that's something we can assess and help them with. They should have, a large variety of fruits and vegetables and proteins, and, not just 5 or maybe 10 select food items in their repertoire.
Mm-hmm. Do you work generally with people at your facility, or do you actually go out into the community?
No, we're at the ITT, Indiana Total Therapy, at the HMI building also.
Mm-hmm. So when we're thinking about kids and those sorts of developments, and you're talking about diet and things of that nature, relate that to their ability then to develop in other areas, because I would guess that there's a tremendous confidence thing that comes into play here too.
Sure, absolutely. And then it becomes an issue too if they go out in public or they go to school and they have a very select repertoire. And too, from a nutritional basis, we have a lot of kids who maybe aren't quite failure to thrive, but certainly aren't gaining weight the way they should because they're not eating a lot of items. And it makes it very difficult for the family to go anywhere, whether it's vacation or a trip to the mall or anything, when they can only eat 3 things or 5 things. So it does, it absolutely develops, and even into their language.
Yeah.
Too. We often see those go hand in hand.
There's a connection. Wow.
So yes.
How about that? A lot of times with kids, they might have trouble saying one letter or another letter, or putting words together the way that we typically do in America. And parents or others will say, their older brother had the same problem and grew right out of it, so just wait for them to grow right out of it. Is that the best strategy? It
really isn't. It really isn't, because it is better to get ahead of it. And I always say to parents, I would rather see it addressed now before they go to school. There's going to be plenty of kids who still need it addressed at school, but if we can get that taken care of, because it will affect the reading, it will affect the writing, it will affect their communication with other students and their teachers. So the earlier the better, really, and the easier it is to improve.
Yeah,
the earlier we address it.
I would guess with your concentration in speech and Whitney with yours, that a child's social abilities to really get along with others and to fit in with others would also be affected if they did not address problem areas that are identified so early in their lives.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. A lot of kids, we say with occupational therapy, we call occupations anything that you do in your daily life. And kids' occupations are play and socializing with their peers. So that's one of the biggest things we see is if you're having trouble with this, then this is really affecting your life. Simple things like being able to play or share, take turns. So it's good to catch it early on so you can help them.
We all remember, and some of us remember, being the last kid chosen for the team when we were younger, because we weren't as good as the other kids at this game or that game. You couldn't throw the ball, couldn't catch the ball as well as other kids. You were always the last kid chosen. Those sorts of things, they not only affect you in terms of your sports, but they affect the other areas of your life as well. And that confidence that you need is really affected by this area of your life seeping into the other areas of your life.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So not only are we helping them, develop those skills of being able to throw and catch a ball better, but simple things of dealing with the social aspects of other kids. So when you're not picked first, how do you deal with it? When you don't want to share, what do you need to do?
Yeah, rubbing some dirt in it isn't always the best,
right.
The best strategy.
That being said, though, and I'm sure Whitney would agree with me that we do promote preschool, not to avoid kids who are maybe delayed. Don't avoid being with other kids. It's still wonderful for them, and then we'll work on it, on the side. So,
I would think it would be absolutely essential that you keep that going. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
You must.
Pre-K.
And those things, I think a lot of times when children are isolated within their own family unit with a brother or a sister or a single child in a home, that if they don't get that social interaction of being actually forced by going to preschool or pre-K, that they're going to be even further delayed, and being in a social situation is going to draw out of them skills and talents they didn't know they had or haven't had a chance to develop.
Absolutely. When I always say the burden, at home, if a child has difficulty communicating, the burden of them communicating is on the parent. The parent does their best to understand what they're saying. They put it in yes/no questions. They reach out and look for all these things. Is this what you want? Is this what you want? But when they go to preschool, the burden becomes on the child, which really forces them to develop a little bit quicker. So it's very helpful.
Mom and dad are going to be in the best position to determine if a child needs occupational therapy or speech therapy. What are some of the signs they should be looking at? Let's start with speech.
First words by 1 year and then develop into 2 words. If they are with a peer or a sibling and you feel that they are behind, if they have a limited repertoire with their foods, if their vocabulary is decreasing instead of increasing, If they seem to have sensory issues, and this is where we overlap with occupational therapy, certain foods make them gag, or it's very tearful at mealtime, or if there's a lot of frustration with communication. Those are all signs, and research does support that if the parents are suspicious that there is a problem, it's a very high percentage that they are correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Whitney, from your standpoint, what are some of those signs parents should be looking for?
Sure. So we'll just start with sensory issues, since Jen had just mentioned that for speech therapy, but it's the same thing with OT. So sensory in terms of a lot of times when kids are hitting or pushing, there's a lot of reasons behind it other than they're just, people think they're not being good or they're not getting what they want, but there's a lot of sensory needs that they have. So that's one thing, or a lot of times they're not able to hold utensils right or brush their teeth correctly or button their clothes, or just having trouble in school or even before school with handwriting. They're having trouble learning how to write their name, all things like that.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's one of those situations where mom and dad might think it'll come.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
But get started now, and you don't have to wait to see if it's
Right.
going to develop. You can get working on it right away.
Absolutely.
Well, and if we can always do an assessment, and the assessment will tell us if they're what's called one standard deviation below the mean. There's it's a very distinct measurement that calls for follow-up therapy.
Yeah.
So it's worth the evaluation.
Yeah.
To find out.
All right. So let's mom and dad, let's get working on that. Grandparents too, because of the way families are structured today, you don't know
Absolutely.
who's living with
Yeah.
whom.
Takes a village.
And a lot of times, when you think about older generations that are helping to raise younger generations, they might have in their mind, well, this is the way I raised my kids. They turned out
Yes.
okay.
Right. And it could be true, but what if it's
Exactly.
not?
Yeah. What if it's not?
Right.
Right.
Exactly. All right. So where do people start?
So you can contact Indiana Total Therapy at 724-357-7068. We are located at the Human Motion Institute, which is a building on the hospital campus. You can call us, or you can talk to your pediatrician,
Yeah.
or like you said, primary care.
Right.
Those
physician.
two first stops. Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah, we have to have a script.
Ladies, thanks so much for being with us this morning. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
It is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank. It is AM 1160 WCCS 101.